Right, just making sure the stream's going out, since we're having all sorts of fucking network issues in this house. Right, here we go. Stream is going out. I am receiving stream. Good. Hi, I'm Street3D, and if you've been following the channel for the past few weeks, you'll probably be aware that I'm having some major Wi-Fi problems. Basically, the HP Omen that I'm using now doesn't like to, well, it connects, but then it just completely locks up when it connects to 5 gigahertz on the Asus RT AC87U. Now, I finally got to the bottom of it, and I don't think there's a hardware fault at all. I think there's an incompatibility issue, and I don't know why it's only decided to rear its head now, because basically I bought the Omen back in February, and then I got the router shortly after at the beginning of March, and they'd been absolutely fine for months up until about the end of May, beginning of June, and then just suddenly it would lock up on 5 gig. Just lock up, just lock up, just lock up. It would have none of it. Now, I think I finally got to the bottom of it. Basically, I've tested a second router that I had, the BT Smart Hub, which is in itself, but on paper, it's a very good bit of kit. But unfortunately, BT's software in it is rather useless. One of the earlier firmwares, the DHCP table wouldn't issue any addresses, and basically it would give the same address to two devices, and then they would both lock up. And like, you'd have the SkyQ box, which is meant to talk to the SkyQ app, and it wouldn't do that. So I eventually replaced it with a TP-Link Archer C9, which on stock firmware caused a freezing problem with the iPhones, and basically yes, the iPhones would have a full connection and freeze, exactly the same as this issue I'm having with the Asus. But quickly toggling the airplane off and on fixed that. It doesn't on this. Sticking to DDWRT firmware on the C9, that router was absolutely awesome until I bricked it when I updated DDWRT. I went to put a newer version on it, just a simple update, and it just didn't have none of it. It just bricked it. So yeah, unfortunately, the one router worked brilliantly in this house, just yeah, and then died. So yeah, I got the Asus RT AC87U, and to be honest with you, it's a phenomenal router, phenomenally good. However, earlier builds of the firmware did have problems with the 5 gigahertz, which supposedly they'd fixed last year, because it's one of the first of the 802.11ac Wave 2 devices, which allows 4x4 multi-use and multiple in, multiple out. And basically, earlier firmwares, long before I had the router, um, were knackered, and then basically as the router matured, the firmware's fixed the problems. And yeah, when I first got it, no problems at all. Occasionally iPhones, if you were in certain rooms of the house, would have a little freeze, and I don't know if it's because it was determining whether it wanted to stay on 5 gig or 2.4, but that issue had been fixed, and everything had been running absolutely perfect with this router up until recently, when the Omen decided it was not having any of it anymore. Now, I've reflashed it. I've gone as far to take it down the MV RAM, and I've completely redo all of that. I've basically I've turned everything off on here, so all the AI protection, which is basically some pretty powerful stuff on this router actually. If you look, you got network protection. You can turn like malicious site block and vulnerability. If you've got a computer device which has got a virus, providing obviously its signatures in there, if it has to dial home to, say, a command and control network, this will block it for you. And yeah, it's pretty awesome stuff. The adaptive QoS, you can prioritize it. You got the speed meters, which just constantly go anyway, but you got QoS, which you can prioritize media streaming, and it did make things a lot more, really good in here. But unfortunately, I've not turned them back on this time in an attempt to try and rule some things out. But yeah, it looks like basically, for whatever reason, the Intel 7265 Wi-Fi card that's in this laptop just doesn't want to speak to the router anymore when it's on 5 gig. I have turned the 802.11 AC beamforming off now, and I'm just double checking. Am I on 2.4 or 5? I'm on 5 gig now, so it's actually working. So I've turned the 802.11 AC and the universal beamforming off, so in the hope that actually that might maintain the connection. But yeah, for whatever reason, this laptop is struggling to speak to that router. I don't think it's a router problem. And likewise, I don't think the laptop's at fault either, because the laptop works absolutely fine with the BT Smart Hub, but the BT Smart Hub is not a great. As I said, if it had run anything other than BT's firmware, that Smart Hub would be a phenomenal bit. In fact, out of all of the routers I've had, apart Wi-Fi performance wise, it was the best. And I've had all the BT home hubs from the first one all the way up to the latest one, which is the Smart Hub. And then I've had a couple of third parties as well. And basically, the BT Home Hub 4 and 5, they were dual band Wi-Fi routers, but used to have some really weird problems with Apple devices, iPhones, and my old white MacBook, where it would have the same issue as this. It would free. You'd be on browsing, and then just randomly it'd freeze. Toggle Wi-Fi on and off, and it would pick up again. And it was due to some regulatory mode that EU routers have, which Apple don't like to support. But yeah, it was a problem I sort of lived with for a while. And then the Smart Hub come out, and in terms of Wi-Fi, everything just connected and worked perfect. The weird freezing issue just went completely. At one point, to get around the freezing issue on the BT home hubs, this is before I had a load of 802.11 AC stuff. I basically had the home hub 5 as the modem and controlling all the IP tables, and then I had the home hub 4 reconfigured to act as an access point, and that would be the only way I'd get 5 gigahertz Wi-Fi actually. Wi-Fi just working without any freezing. It was really weird, convoluted way I had to get it working using two of them. So I'm no stranger to weird Wi-Fi issues. As I said, the Archer C9 with DDWRT, that was probably my best router in terms of just turning it on and it just fired up. It worked really well. But I like to keep on top of my firmware, security updates and stuff. So, and as I said, because it was running custom firmware DDWRT, it wasn't the official kind. And basically, yeah, I went to flash an update onto it via the update mechanism, and it just bricked it. And unfortunately, I ain't a dab hand with a soldering iron to solder on JTAG cables, so I've got it sitting on my kitchen table. It's just dead though. I mean to give it away if someone knows how to flash it and repair it, because it's only the firmware's bricked. By all accounts, you can JTAG into it if you dismantle it and solder some wires on and have a USB serial port or something, and then basically it will you can reflash the firmware back onto it. So yeah, so then I got this one, and this one has been, as I said, it hasn't been without its hiccups. I've had to tweak a couple of settings to get things working, but everything for this generally was really stable. And with things on this router, if I'd have got this router in the first place, I wouldn't have my little Western Digital MyCloud NAS under the TV, because this has Time Machine and stuff on it. I only got the NAS under the TV for Time Machine. And yeah, this route has been absolutely fantastic up until recently. And as I said, I just think for some weird, bizarre reason, and I don't know if it's just because of other networks in the area, maybe. Because as I said, I've disabled beamforming right now, and the connection appears to be rock solid. As you can see, I'm uploading at 6.5 meg, which is my encoder OBS's maximum upload settings, so it's actually working all right. And that's with the 802.11 AC beamforming turned off. So it might not actually be all doom and gloom. Actually, this has been the most stable it's been in the last couple of days, to be honest with you. So I'm going to keep an eye on this actually. But yeah, will upgrading the Wi-Fi card in the laptop to the 8265 help me out? It might or it might not. But the fact is, I can get it for 15 quid, and I think, to be honest with you, just for the fact that it's a newer card with the multi-user, multiple in, multiple out Wave 2 Wi-Fi capability, which matches the Wave 2 capability of the router, I think I might just, for 15 quid, I might just get it and stick it in when I upgrade the RAM on it, because I obviously am going to be upgrading the RAM, and installing the new Wi-Fi card on this is exactly the same as updating the RAM. Literally, you just pop the old one out, stick a new one in, and just reconnect the antennas. So, it's no different. It's no harder than opening it and putting a new RAM in. So for 15 quid, I'm gonna probably go for the newer Wi-Fi card. As I said, it probably won't make a huge. It's not going to make a huge amount of difference in terms of performance, because it's still a 2x2 802.11 AC, which is 867 meg. So it's not going to be any faster, but it does support multi-user, multiple in, multiple out, which is what this router also supports. And when I get more devices which are capable of multi-use and multiple in, multiple out, it'll unlock the full potential of the router. Because at the moment, the way Wi-Fi works, if you don't know, is basically you have your router, and then all your devices what are attached, it basically blats it out one at a time. So it goes bang, 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 and literally, say you got a circle of devices circling your router, it'll do one at a time. So it'll go all around, and yeah, it's not a very efficient way of doing it. When you've got multi-user, multiple in and multiple out devices, I've got 4 antennas on that router. If I've got a laptop which has 2x2 multi-user, multiple in, multiple out, and my iPhone, which also has, no iPhones have got it, but say the new iPhone does come with Wave 2 Wi-Fi, how that will work is, if both the iPhone and the laptop support it, the router can then coordinate the traffic so that 2 antennas will be sending it to the laptop, and the other 2 will be sending it to the phone at the same time. And in theory, it means there's less bandwidth wasted. This router can do a total bandwidth over 5 gigahertz of 1733 meg, but right now it can only use 867 of it, purely because I have no devices in this house what support anything more than 2x2. However, with multi-user, multiple in, multiple out, it will coordinate it so the whole 1733 can be used. But what it does, it'll split it so it does it over to 2 devices at once. It's whether it'll make much difference in real world use, probably not. My internet connection's getting slower as time goes on. It was at 42 meg a few weeks ago. It's down to below 40. So I've complained to BT multiple times, and they've said, yeah, Openreach have got to replace the lines, but they can't be bothered to do it. So, it's dropping again. So if it gets to 35, that's the minimum guaranteed speed. So at that point, I can then kick up a right stink. So part of me hopes it doesn't get any slower, but part of me hopes that it does drop to 35, and then I can really kick up a stink. So yeah. Hello, Les. Just discussing my Wi-Fi issues. I've had a few followers been giving me suggestions on my various videos I've done on the topic, and I think I've come to I think I figured it out. It's incompatibility between the Wi-Fi router and the Intel 7265 Wi-Fi card. But what I don't get is why now? Why has it suddenly happened now? And you'll probably be screaming at me, driver updates, router firmware, router firmware. Well, I can rule out drivers because when this first started happening, I tried Windows, and then I also ran a Linux Live USB, so same issue on both Linux and Windows drivers. I've updated, downgraded, uninstalled, reinstalled all the drivers on the laptop side of things. I don't even think I'm running quite the latest. I'm just using the ones Windows provided this time. I haven't bothered to update them and manually install it from Intel because Windows Update just does it absolutely fine. So yeah, so it's not the drivers on the laptop, and also likewise, it's not the router firmware either because I've got Merlin on there now, which I run Merlin purely because if you've got an ASUS router, this geezer updates all the security patches far quicker than ASUS does. This guy's the firmware I've got now was literally released about 4 days ago, whereas the latest firmware from the official ASUS page for the RTAC87U was last released back in March. Well, we've had the WannaCry thing come in at that point, which exploits Samba, which this router has built into it. So this firmware has all of them holes plugged, whereas obviously router firmware from March hasn't. So yeah, I run Merlin's firmware, but in the process of diagnosing it, I dropped back to stock firmware, and I also dropped back a further version, and yeah, in the same issue. So I don't know why it was all kicking off, but yeah, I've reset up the router now, but I've turned off all of the optional stuff. So all of the AI protection, the NAT acceleration, the traffic analyzer, the adaptive QoS, that's all turned off. The only thing turned on, which isn't turned on by default, is the USB hard drive server, so I can access some files on a hard drive I've got attached to it. That and IPv6, because IPv6 wasn't the problem in the end, so I've just turned it back on, so I'm ready for future internet. Plus, it also allows me to get around the ISP blocks. Not that I actually use it, but it's just a way to test the DNS settings. But it allows me to get to the Pirate Bay, which you cannot do on a UK ISP because their DNS servers lock it down. If you try to do it using an ISP provided router or just the ISP DNS, which would have been set up, what it does, it forwards you to this page has been seized by the High Court, you can't access it thing. Whereas I use Google's DNS on both the IPv4 and the IPv6 side. So yeah, I'm pretty much set up for the future of the Tinterweb. It'll probably come up ICMP is filtered. Sometimes it says it's filtered, sometimes it doesn't. But yeah, everything else is all supported. So yeah, and as you can see, since I've turned beamforming off, it appears to have actually might have solved it. I'd never turned beamforming off during all my previous tests because it'd always been turned on. And oddly enough, if you turned beamforming off, it made the iPhones disconnect. It was really weird because they say on the ASUS firmware, if you have problems with iPhones, turn the beamforming off. So I did that before, and the Wi-Fi would work absolutely perfect when it was connected. But then as soon as the iPhone went to sleep, it dropped back to its 4G connection. It's like, okay, it shouldn't be doing that. It should be holding on. So what I've done is I've sort of half and half it. I've got the beamforming and the beamforming and everything turned on the 2.4 gig band, but I've then turned it off on the 5 gig band, and it appears to be a halfway house. It looks like it's fixed whatever issue that I might have had, but obviously I'll have to test it over the next few days to see if it's definitely fixed. But it appears for now to have fixed the 5 gig Wi-Fi, and yeah, and the iPhone don't appear to be going to sleep when it's idling. So we'll see how it goes. So yeah, as I said, I think I will install the 8265. Um, as it's probably, yeah, if I'm opening the machine up anyway to stick more RAM in it for 15 quid, it's worth putting a more modern Wi-Fi card in which supports the newer Wave 2 802.11 AC stuff, because that's where it's all going. So it's worth putting a more modern Wi-Fi card in, I think. For 15 quid, you can't really go wrong. The guy on eBay's got, pretty much 99.4% positive feedback, and the last load of products he sold is this specific Wi-Fi card, and everyone's like, yeah, it's a good card, good card. And to be honest with you, the 7265, there are loads of forum posts of people having lots of issues with the 7265 over the years. So whereas the 8 series Intel cards, by all accounts, are far, far better anyway. So, just based on reputation alone, if I'm opening it up, I'm going to stick a new card in, 15 quid. You can't really go wrong with that. But yeah, it looks like I might have fixed it. Also, yeah, another thing I noticed earlier is when I had the BT router plugged in. It's completely unrelated, but when I had the BT router plugged in, my little girl's got FaceTime on her iPad, and occasionally she'll FaceTime to downstairs because she likes watches YouTube videos before she goes to bed, and then she tends to FaceTime downstairs. I want this for my birthday. I want that for my birthday. And with the Asus router, you can hear her talking through the ceiling. And with the Asus router, there's a lot less delay between her talking upstairs. You can hear her through the ceiling between her doing that and then the coming through on the FaceTime. Whereas going through the BT router, there was a much more significant delay on it. So it's little things like that is why I'm persisting with using the Asus router, because it is just a phenomenally good bit of kit. I mean, it's bloody expensive for a reason. Um, it's just really weird that this problem has occurred, and that it's occurred this. I don't know why it would suddenly go. You know what? I don't want to talk to that anymore. It's like they've had a lovers tiff, isn't it? It's like the Asus is the husband and the little Intel card in the thing's the wife, and they've had a little lovers tiff. Why am I speaking to you? Oh, you. That's what it feels like, because it's just weird. It was sudden. It was like absolutely fine for months, and then just sudden weird issues of, yeah, you've got network, but we're freezing, and it's just weird as to why it's done that. So I'll try the beamforming settings. I might have found a happy medium there, because I don't really need the beamforming. This house is not big enough to really worry about how the 5 gig beams are forming. I get decent 5 gig coverage in every room in the house. I mean, the only room in the house I drop now and again down to 2.4 is the upstairs bathroom, and that's because it's pretty much directly diagonal. It's probably the furthest room away from the router, but at that point you'd rather it be on 2.4 anyway, I guess. But yeah, so I'm going to see how this goes on, and yeah. Intel 7265 does not like Asus RT AC87U by the looks of it. So yeah, at least I can put this. At least I've got. At least I know where I'm looking now. It's one of those bloody problems where, yeah, it is a flip. In networking, it's just a flipping nightmare. So yeah, HG blah 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 blah. Yeah, you were a good call in plugging the ISP router in. I wasn't going. I wasn't going to do that initially, because I had tested it with another router and separated and had all different routers and all that set up to test it. But yeah, after running it on the BT Smart Hub this afternoon, and it just being rock solid, yeah, it was a good call actually. So cheers for that, mate. And yeah, uh, Asus, the route is probably too complicated and powerful for its own good. So yeah, Anyway, thanks for watching, guys, and I'll catch you on the next one.